Yo, what's good? What up, basketball world? Welcome back to the Made Hoops podcast. This is episode number 9. I'm your host, Austin Smith, and I'm joined by my good fellas here with me today. We've got our guy, Eric Hampford. You all know who he is, man. We can call him the boss man. I guess you could say that of Made Hoops, who does a bunch of extra things that are great things for Made Hoops here. And we've got a special guest in the building as well. We've got Mr. Travis Graf, and Travis is a Rivals national basketball analyst at grassroots high school level. And so, Travis, man, we're excited to be here, brother. We're excited to have you here. It's good to see you back too, man, because you did some traveling as well. How are you feeling today, Eric?
I'm good. It was really exciting to be back on the road and kind of be out on the road with the college coaches during a live period, see some of the older guys who, I've been able to evaluate coming through the middle school ranks and now seeing how kind of they're progressing. And I'm excited to see how some of the guys on the big stage of EYBL did as well, and see if those evaluations we did over the past 2 years are holding strong or what we're looking at.
Love it. I love it. Well, Travis, man, again, thanks for being on the show with us, brother. We're glad to have you hopping on board with us today, and we'll get right to it. We'll let you introduce yourself, man, and give us a little backstory briefly about you. But Travis, how are you feeling today, brother? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Doing good, man. I kind of lucked out this year with the grassroots schedule. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, so there's been there's a Made Hoops, there was an Adidas, and then the second session at EYBL was all in Indianapolis. And then the session 3 for the EYBL is going to be in Louisville. So lucked out travel-wise, didn't have any long flights, long delays, anything like that. I'm also willing to bet I'm the first guest on the show that's ever had a deer head in the back of their picture. So I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit different than a lot of the guys that have covered basketball in the past. But yeah, it was a really good weekend. It was talent filled up at EYBL. Just a lot of good competition. Was mostly focusing on 23s and 24s up there because I was the only one for Rivals up there. Saw a couple 2025s, Cooper Flagg and the Boozer twins. They're the real deal, all of them. So
good deal. Well, Travis, you mentioned that you work for Rivals, and I want to make sure we give people kind of an accurate enough backstory. Tell us about your job with Rivals and kind of what goes into what you do on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis.
Yeah, so when the job opened up, I'd actually been the recruiting analyst. I'd done it for Rutgers in the past, done some for Florida in the past. I've been the recruiting analyst for Kentucky and Louisville Kentucky for the past 4 years and Louisville for the past 2 years. So Rob Cassidy is really familiar with my work. I've been with Made Hoops for a couple years now. Time's flying, Eric. It seems like yesterday, really.
There's no doubt.
But so whenever the job opened up, Rob Cassidy, who's the senior analyst there, was really familiar with my work and gave me the opportunity. It's been my dream job. Anybody that's known me forever knows I've been keeping up with basketball recruiting since I was probably 3rd or 4th grade. Like all the way back to the ABCD camps. Like I've been keeping up with it since then. So, but yeah, it's like a dream come true. It doesn't seem like work, honestly, but just so now I'll have a say in the rankings, just covering all the events. Like to cover a lot of Made Hoops stuff for you guys because you always have the best talent. And something that I kind of want to get into is a lot of the national analysts don't really like covering middle school basketball. So I kind of want to make that my niche and get in there with the Made Hoops and like get familiar with these kids from 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And I kind of want that to be my thing.
Man, I love it. And we're glad to have you on board as a team member here. But you mentioned a good point. Like the middle school stars today, ultimately the stars of tomorrow, right? And if you can get ahead of that curve early on, it gives you a chance to not only see the development long-term, but you build better relationships and you're really able to get a feel of how a player can project to the next level as he goes through his career, man. So you wanted to be in part of that field and tackle things at the middle school level is definitely pretty dope. Let me ask you this, T. Upon taking the Rivals position, how's things changed for you personally? And then obviously you got a different expectation from people, from others, when they see you as a guy who is a decision maker per se.
And I was about to just say too, when he said, I have a say in the rankings, I was going to say, be careful what you wish for, man. Yeah. I already know that you're getting some of that from the coaching side and the political side as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act for sure. But yeah, it's now the expectations are a lot higher. Like before, I wasn't able to get credentialed for all this stuff. So I kind of want to make a name for myself because I'm the new young guy. I want to be one of the first ones in the gym, one of the last ones to leave. I want to be taking in it, like be a sponge and watch as much as I can, listen to as many smart people as I can, because I don't know everything. That's how I'm going into it, going into this whole situation. I listen to people like Eric. I listen to people like Chad Babel, our boss man over at Maze. So I take a lot of things that they say to heart and just like lean into that. But yeah, it's definitely, I get more calls from coaches about like, hey, where's my kid gonna be ranked? Where's this, that, and the other than I ever have in my whole life, probably within the past 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
no, it comes with the territory though. It's fun
I
time.
was just gonna say that comes with the territory. Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, let's dive into even more of what you do at a deeper level. What do you look for when you're evaluating prospects, Trav?
Right now, it's like I said, I was focusing a lot on the 23 and 24 classes. When Eric is starting to see these kids like 8th grade, freshman year, even before that, it's all about potential. And then I'm looking to see about your rising junior year and your senior year, is that potential starting to teeter into production? Like is there starting to be production if potential far outweighs the production? I'm looking for translatable buckets, like buckets that are automatically going to translate. Do you have a particular one good skill? Like, are you just good all around player? Do you have one thing that's advanced in your game? I mean, it's different depending on positions. But it's like, I like seeing if point guards can get paint touches. That's something I'm really big on, is paint touches as a point guard. Just multi-level scoring on the wing. I'm a sucker for a good rim protector too. So that's one thing about the 2023 class. There's not very many like over the top good bigs in 2023. So that's why I was trying to see this weekend what I thought about those guys. That's something I was focusing on.
I think what makes it difficult too, and this is true for regardless of what level you're evaluating, is in the age of social media too, right? Like you're coming into every situation, whether it's an event or getting, tipped off on certain kids. If they have a hype train around them, it's, hey, is this hype justified? Yeah. You're coming in with a preconceived notion. And sometimes a lot of times actually, I love to have no bias, right? And you may not even know it's a bias, but when you see so much on certain kids, there's an expectation level there. And however they perform based off that, you may be really disappointed. And it's like, well, if you didn't know anything about this kid from the jump because you hadn't been seeing things on him on the internet for the past 6 months, you may have actually really liked the kid. And now you're coming in and you're disappointed because of what you'd seen around him. And I think that's one major pitfall to how we're evaluating these kids, and how you have to really stay level-headed and keep the blinders on and stay true to how you evaluate, right? Not letting outside noise in, especially in a position, Trav, like you have right now, where you have so many relationships now with these coaches where they want to talk to you all the time about their kids because, obviously they want to pub their guys. They want to be an advocate for their guys, but that kid doesn't have a special relationship to you. You have to evaluate him as equally as you evaluate any other kid you see.
Well, see, that's one thing. Like if I miss on an evaluation, that's one thing. Like that's on me. Like I want to be the one that misses. I don't want to go off of like even you. Like I trust your eyes as much as anybody in this game. Like if you tell me this kid is a stud, like I want to see it myself before like I make a jump in the rankings, just because I only have myself to blame. Because if I listen to everybody, then there's 200 5-stars each year. So yeah. So I mean, I definitely think, like you said, I think it's best going into a situation where I don't know the kids. And that's like, because I'll admit, I don't know any of the middle school kids outside of the like AJ DeBonces of the world. So like whenever I go to a Made Hoops event when they're 8th, 9th grade, whatever, I don't know a lot of these kids. So it's really nice being able to see, like go in there with a fresh mind. I have no preconceived notions of who they are, what they are. So that's always nice.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Travis, let me ask you this. The transfer portal is obviously impacting everybody around basketball in totality. You were in a different, unique position as well, being an evaluator. Has the transfer portal and knowing how the recruitment landscape has changed, has that affected how you personally evaluate prospects, knowing how they can potentially translate their skills and their game to the next level?
Yeah, I think the transfer portal in general has changed because I've talked to a bunch of college coaches this weekend, and a couple of different things are, one, they're not looking for any 2022s or JUCOs or anything like that. It's all who they can get out of the portal. And two, a lot of these coaches are reaching out to kids that they know they're not going to get, like mid-majors or low majors are reaching out to kids they know are going to go a level above them, because in hopes of having that relationship 2 years down the line when they possibly hit the transfer portal and have to go back down. Wow. So it's, but yeah, it's kind of like, so you have to play that game now. Like it's the point where some of the prominent programs this weekend weren't even out evaluating, watching games because they were hosting official visitors.
Right.
It's affecting everybody is virtually what you're saying. I mean, from the head coach at a Division I program all the way down to the rising seniors who traditionally would be getting offers or recruited a certain way. Now it's, hey, we got kids in the portal that have real college experience. They could come right in and play right away. They don't have to sit a year. They're going to be tough enough, physically mature enough. Hey, we're going to always recruit that player. And I think there's a learning curve there where we have to re-educate the parents, the coaches, the kids on and navigate this whole landscape together, from the college coaches to the parents to the kids. It's a new world of recruiting in general and just how the sport itself works. And that's not even a negative to it, right? Like, I think a lot of these kids, they're getting what they deserve, right? In terms of like the NIL deals and building their personal brands. I think that's all justified, and it's been a long time coming, but now we're seeing the effects of that trickle down of how it goes across the board.
See, it's kind of a double-edged sword because I deal with like around here in Louisville, there's a lot of low major kids, mid-major kids that are trying to find the right fit, and there's some uncommitted seniors. I'm like, if you have an offer on the table somewhere that you think is a pretty good fit and that you're wanted there and you're loved there, like, jump on it at this point. And they'll be like, well, what if something better comes along? I'm like, well, if something better comes along at this point, I'd be really shocked. But at the same time, like, they're like, what if we don't like the fit? Well, that's the other side of the transfer portal, because you could just transfer the next year.
Yeah.
It's like,
playing the waiting game is a dangerous game. And that's always been the case, right? Where it's like the grass isn't always greener. You may not get that offer that you're looking for. And then by the time you go back and circle back with the schools that were interested in you and were offering you, you may not have that same opportunity.
Yeah. And I think Travis Branham tweeted out something today. It was like half of the transfer portal averaged under 3 points a game this year, which I thought was really interesting.
Wow.
That is wild, actually.
I wonder, I know in football it's a high rate, but I'm wondering in basketball, I got to go back and do some research on it. I wonder how many people don't end up somewhere else.
That is a really good question.
A lot of kids are hitting the portal without having a spot, then some of them are getting screwed over in the end.
True. That is true. Yeah, I just appreciate your feedback on that, both of you all, because again, obviously now you're evaluating prospects and you're got to keep in mind, hey, okay, this one kid now, does his skill set translate to year one? Is he a late bloomer? Does he not develop fully until year two? Can he make an impact right away? And it depends on the level. So appreciate your feedback on that, Trav, definitely. I want to go ahead and keep moving on. Let's talk about that EYBL session number 2. You mentioned you're able to stop by. What were some of the main storylines from you that you took away when you left?
Well, heading like last summer, it was all about the wings in this class. You had JJ Taylor, Matas, Ron Holland is kind of come along. There's KJ Evans, just all those guys that were like top 4, top 10 guys last year. Now it's starting to transfer to who's the top point guard in the class. DJ Wagner is still number 1 in my opinion, but Isaiah Collier had a great weekend. Caleb Foster looked like old Caleb Foster. He kind of like tapered off a little bit, but he had a fantastic weekend for Team Thad. Draven Gibbs Lawhorn looked good. And then, Isaiah Collier was probably, well, Rob Dillingham too. Rob Dillingham looked good as well. But Isaiah Collier looked really, really good for the skill factor.
Yeah, man. Shout out to ATL. You know how Eric, you know me, man. I gotta shout out the home team on my end, but not like you mentioned. It was it was competitive. And one thing I've enjoyed doing, Travis, just simply being able to watch on the live stream. I think that's pretty cool how Nike partnered with Twitch on that, and being able to get a presence of just still being able to see basketball at a high level. Really quickly, I want to ask you this too, Trav. You know, now with the recruiting landscape being changed, you mentioned how there were some programs that didn't, you know, necessarily show up potentially because of the recruiting visits. So now, how has that made you even work even harder in terms of being even more articulate on your evaluations? Because if they're not at the event, if they're not there live, obviously your phone rings more. What kind of momentum has that made you push harder a little bit? I guess if you can ask that question.
It's I mean, it's definitely, they lean on people like me more, the schools that aren't there, the schools that have that trust factor with me or any other individual in the space, that have the relationships. But yeah, it makes you pay even more attention to detail. You have to write down every little thing, because at any time your evaluation skills could be taken into question by whoever you're talking to. Be like, oh, like I saw this, and they go back and watch the tape, because that's the thing. That's the beauty of the live stream. You can go back and watch it at any point. Like, they're up for like a month or whatever after the fact. But yeah, they can still see it with their own eyes, but they like to call and ask because they're not in the gym. And a lot of people like to be in the gym to see the stuff. Like, I love live streams for what they are, but still I'd rather evaluate somebody in the gym. So I'm getting the calls regarding that.
Sure. Let's talk briefly about the 2024 and 2025 classes. What did you like from the 15s and 16s, brother? Did you have any takeaways there?
Rob Wright for team final might be one of my favorite kids nationally. I'm a huge fan of his. He had a huge weekend. Jalen Shelley for pro skills. He just transferred. Well, he didn't transfer. He came over full-time to basketball recently. He was a wide receiver, 6'8" wide receiver. Doesn't even really know what he's doing out there, but he's got all these skills. So it's like, right now, I think he could be the second best prospect in Texas behind Trey Johnson, but he might have some of the highest upside in the class whenever it all comes to fruition. Carter Knox was good. Jason Asamoah was good. Jaron Stevenson, I watched the one game where he went off for, he had 18 and 11. Those hit 50% from three in that game. That was nice to see. And then Jalen Harrelson and Trent Sisley for Indy Heat. That's one of the best 1-2 punches in the 2024 class.
Wow.
I love what I'm hearing, because I'm hearing a lot of guys who have been doing this since they were in middle school. So it's great to see that they're progressing at the rates that they do. So, and that's a huge thing, right? When it's like they're getting that type of pressure in the 8th grade as like, hey, these guys are next up. I mean, we know it's a marathon. It's a long road, that 4-year window of trying to get to the end of your high school career and embark on what comes on after that. But I'm hearing a lot of guys that have come through our doors.
There's a late bloomer. Well, I wouldn't even say late bloomer. He's just kind of popping up on the scene. I think he'd been hidden behind some other top talent at some point. But Mikey Lewis for the Oakland Soldiers was really, like, I think kid could be a pro on down the line. Still some rough around the edges parts of his game, but he, like, you see, like, he has the it factor. He has the flashes that, like, are elite. That's a kid I really like.
That's good. Wow, man. A lot of great insight, man. We love that, Trav. Any other last takeaways from you, man, that just may have caught your attention, or things you want people to keep in mind, or prospects to keep in mind from the EYBL session 2?
Well, you brought up 2025. I think that could be Duke's best class of all time. If you, like, right now, if you look at it, because, I mean, let's just say the Boozers go there, because that seems like it's probably going to happen. Cooper Flagg, who is a dude for Maine United. Was it Maine Elite or Maine United? I forget. Maine United. He's probably the only, like, big time guy on his team. They have a couple of other kids I think will ultimately be mid-major, maybe mid-major plus, but Cooper Flagg is going to be firmly in the discussion for the top spot in 2025. And he named Duke as his dream school. That's the offer that he wants the most.
So what's kind of cool now and every year it happens with the rising freshman class, it's kind of being unveiled to the high school media side, where last year we saw these guys and we were like, whoa, this 2025 group has a chance to be the next really good class. And you're really starting to see that now, kind of like you said, come to fruition between them, between Koa Pete, between Darren Peterson. I mean, you got some dudes at the top, right? And AJ was a part of that class too. So it's like, and there's no saying that he won't end up jumping back up.
Yeah, if AJ jumps back into the 2025 class, he's going to be firmly in the mix for number 1 too. He had a great weekend as well. He's just somebody that has all the tools. But I have to give a shout out to Brian Flynn, because last year he kept on raving about Cooper Flagg, just kept on going on and on. And I was like, who is this kid? And he said, just wait till you see him. Just wait. And I saw it. I was like, yeah, I see what you're talking about.
No.
So,
no,
if all 3 of those guys went to Duke, that's a long way.
Look at you projecting a Duke recruiting class for 4 years down the line. I mean, don't even get their people, their message boards. They're already starting to boom once this podcast comes out.
Don't blow up, Eric. Tell them.
Can't even drive yet, but whatever, so.
Nah, man. Well, Trav, we appreciate you, brother. Eric, did you have anything, man, you wanted to just talk briefly with Trav about before we finish up?
Not particularly. I mean, I love that the guys he mentioned were guys that, like I said, a big part of, if I'm doing my job correctly is when I'm watching some of these 8th graders, it's my job to project, hey, Isaiah Collier is going to be a high major top 50 kid or whatever 4 years down the line. The kids that he's talking about, they're all kind of coming to fruition. I miss like everybody else, believe that. But I like to think I know what I'm talking about too. And having Trav on and talking about some of these kids. And obviously I'm always staying abreast on what's going on in all the circuits and where these McDonald's All-Americans are coming from and where they're going and which of those kids are ours and which evals I got right, wrong, whatever. I'm trying to learn just like everybody else, but I'm hearing good things about kids that I liked, 3 and 4 years ago. So it's good. It's always good to hear that and reaffirm what I think to be true.
Another feather in Eric Hampford's cap, huh?
I try, baby.
Bingo. Well, Travis, thanks for your time. Again, everyone, this is Travis Graf. He's a national basketball recruiting analyst for Rivals, man. And he's also partnered with us in Made Hoops, helping us evaluate some of these prospects of the future. So, Trav, again, thanks for your time, brother. We'll be seeing you again sometime soon.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's pretty cool. You talk about having Trav around, just simply being able to give his, do more of his viewpoint and see things through his lens and give us another great teammate to have here at Made. And EYBL session 2 was tough, man. I heard a lot of good things about it.
It's a different type of platform, man. And I say that knowing what all 3 of the platforms are like, the Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike platforms. It's different. That's really all I can say. Right? And I don't know how anyone could really argue otherwise. I mean, it's different. And you really got it. You find out if you're that guy, right? Like that's where you go to find out, hey, is the hype justified? Am I really him? And you'll know pretty quickly because there's not an off game. Right. You're going to know pretty quickly if you are him or if you're not. And if you're not, you better go figure it out if you're going to come back for another session.
All day long, man. You can't dodge the smoke, as the young kids say nowadays. Well, let's talk about you, man. You were able to hold court at the Hoop Group Pit Jam Fest, another big time event that's been around, right? And so how was that for you being able to go check that action out?
Yeah, I mean, Hoop Group does a great job with the Pit Jam Fest. I mean, it's always one of the must-see events of the year. Another year, they've done a tremendous job. I mean, they had 600 plus teams in the gym. I mean, it's wild to be able to run events of that size. I mean, I think about it even just not from a talent standpoint, but logistically, right? You're at convention center, multiple locations, a lot goes into it. And anyone who is on the event side and runs events, you have to respect that. But from a talent standpoint, even going up against Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, and then obviously other national events that are going on here, there, and everywhere during the live period, there was still talent in the gym. It was good. I was able to one of my main things is to find new names and some guys who were under the radar. So that really was what my objective was going out there, and Pit Jam Fest always delivers in that regard.
Love it. You mentioned keep an eye out for some new names and players you liked. Who were some of those prospects that caught your attention?
Yeah, so I think and right away Friday night when we got there, I think it was the second game I watched. Select basketball out of Idaho came with a team of kids from the Pacific Northwest, which was a group of Idaho kids, a few kids from Montana, Wyoming. Really talented team. They have a 6'5", 2024 wing guard, Liam Campbell, who absolutely blew the roof off the place on night one. He probably had 30, 35 points, shoot it from anywhere, could get to spots in the mid-range, knows what to do with the ball, high IQ. I mean, he's the type of kid who I think can be recruited, almost anywhere at this point. I'm not going to rule it out to say that even the Blue Bloods can't get in it if he continues to improve and ascend, but he really had a huge weekend. And overall, they were just a really fun group to watch. In total, that game I was actually going to watch the NJ Shore Shots and see a 2023 Tyler Tejada, a 6'7" wing forward site. He was really skilled, very impressive. I liked him a lot in that 2023 group. Other kids that caught my eye, there was a team, Hustle Paris, who came over literally from France. Andy Sigiskar, 6'9" forward, very impressive as well. And then 24s and 25s are really where you found some high level teams and kids as well. I don't want to leave out Jersey Force 17s. Their 2023 group was talented. Giancarlo Peguero, another very talented kid for them. Team Final Red 17s, Ruben Rodriguez had a very solid weekend. But 2024 and 2025 was really where it was at, and we got to see some other high level kids and teams in that group. So I was really focused in on Team Mello 16s. They came and they did their thing. They won a championship. Caden Lewis, a strong guard for them, and Drew McKenna, who's like a 6'7" wing forward. Very impressive. Overall, their group was very good as well. Other 16U groups, Ohio Rebels, who has been in our Midwest Mania event as well as our warm-up events. They have a good independent group where they have DeAndre Jones, Hosea Steele are both talented 2024s, and then Damon Frieri, who's a 6'7", 2025, who's really starting to see his name buzz a little bit. 15U, you had Team Durant, who won a championship, Derek Dixon, 6'4" wing guard, gotten very, very skilled over the past 6 to 8 months, coming off of a successful 8th grade year in our league. Cameron Ward, 6'6" forward, continues to improve as well. Team Rio University is who they beat in the championship. 2026, Aiden Durkak, 8th grader, who really kind of had a great weekend as well, playing for Mike Rice. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, there was so many good teams and players. Team Thrill, Tyler Jackson, very talented point guard. Like I said, I mean, there was a bunch of different guys there who I really liked.
Eric, let me ask you this, because obviously you got a Rolodex of guys here, and you've been able to evaluate from obviously our levels at May all the way up to the high school level. We asked Trav earlier what he looked for. What do you look for, Eric, when you're evaluating prospects?
It's a lot of the same stuff he said, right? But it also, I think it in kind of his point, it depends on the level of where they're at in their development, right? When you're in 7th and 8th grade, it's, hey, you're looking at potential, right? And that's one huge thing you got to keep in mind, right? There's only so much you can expect from a 15-year-old. There's a lot of holes in their game. There's a lot of maturity that still needs to be, ironed out there, but you're looking for some of those long-term indicators, right? How much growth is left in them physically? What are some of those translatable skills? As they get older, you're really starting to hope that some of that potential, it actually starts to turn the corner, right? Because the potential game can get you, in a lot of trouble in this game, right? There's a ton of kids who in the middle school lane, by the time they're sophomores and juniors, they're fizzling out, they're physically plateauing, and then it's other guys who ascend. And that's always the way it's going to be, right? Even if you're as tapped in as you can possibly be on an 8th grade class, there's always late bloomers. There's always kids that are developing at their own pace that are going to not show up until 10th or 11th grade. And then at that point, it's the same things like Travis said. It's those translatable skills. It's what do they do that's elite. It's how high is their IQ. And then some of the other physical stuff, the athleticism, are they going to be able to do things at a certain level, at the highest levels when you're talking about high major, mid major. So yeah, it's a lot of different stuff. And then one thing I think that's consistent across, regardless of what age you're looking at, is you're taking into account the off the court background check type stuff, right? What is their off court situation? What is their family dynamic? Are there any negatives there that and possible red flags that could really trip them up? And that's the one thing I had a conversation with this weekend with someone was, that's the one thing I can't evaluate, right? Like I can't tell you if a certain kid has something here off the court that I don't know. And then that's the reason why they didn't ultimately succeed. And that's what makes the job hard, right? Like they may be an incredibly gifted player on the court, but we've seen it a million times. Sometimes it's something that gets in the way off court. And that's unfortunately something that we can't always account for, but that's why getting that background information and off court stuff is so vital to being able to project where a kid might be in 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, depending where they are in their development.
Love it. Dope. Now that's good insight for everybody, and parents, players, coaches, man. I hope y'all tapped into that. We're running that back and listen to that again because Eric gave some very valuable jewels and gems for you all to keep in mind as you play on through the summer travel ball series and circuits. One last thing for you, just to go back to the Pitt Jam Fest again, just any last minute takeaways or anything that really caught your eye regarding prospects at the lower levels, 25 and 24s, class of 25 and 24s, that really you just went home and saying, oh man, I want to make sure that I keep this in mind going forward for these potential prospects?
For me, like I said, it's a lot of, especially in that as soon as they're graduated on from middle school to 9th and 10th grade, it's making sure that transitional period is, hey, are they getting better? Are they improving? So when I'm watching, and I'll talk about Durant and Melo because they're programs that I'm used to working with in our circuits and stuff. Typically, you're seeing a lot of holdovers from those 8th grade teams as they get into 9th grade. So I want to take a look at that, those evals I made last year, and see where they're at. So when I talk about Derek Dixon, when I talk about Cameron Ward, those were two guys that were really, they're guys in 8th grade. And that seems to be the case again in 9th grade, where they're both making, strides in their game as far as being able to do stuff off the bounce. They're getting more athletic. They've gotten stronger. Obviously, they've had solid high school seasons. You could tell that they're working and they're doing their part to get where they need to be. So for me, it's always looking, hey, what is it going to be at the next level, right? Like while I may be projecting those guys 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the line, every step is crucial in that development. And I don't want to take that for granted. I'm looking at those guys 1 year after 8th grade, right? Okay, now they're doing it at the 9th grade level. It'll be the same thing next year when they're 24 or when they're in the 10th grade class, right? Okay, are they still where they need to be? Okay, who are some of the new kids in the DMV? Talking about Durant specifically, but you're doing that across the board, right? It's like, hey, just like it's a step-by-step process for those kids to get from middle school to, obviously, they all have aspirations of playing collegiately. Right. You can't get there without taking every appropriate step because there are no shortcuts. And that's kind of how I look at it evaluation wise too, where it's like, I got to make sure that they're checking off those different boxes as they go. And part of my job is to say, well, maybe I was wrong on this one, or why isn't player X, Y, or Z like doing what they need to do, or why is their development hindered, or why are they stalling out? And then you really kind of have to do some deep dives into why isn't it working out? And sometimes it's a me thing, right? Maybe I just misevaluated it, and that's fine. Like we're all human. I don't care how good of a scout anyone is in this game. We all miss, and that it's totally acceptable because it's such an inexact science. But like I said, that's why it's so important. And that's why I think live coverage is cool, and it's changed the game, the way people can watch events all over the country, but nothing will ever replace being in the gym and actually getting to know these kids and getting to know their character, getting to know their families, getting to know the dynamics that they have off the court while mixing that in with what they can do on the court.
Facts. No, I love that, man. That's a big point. And that's why you are one of our guys, one of our main players. I guess you could say that here at Made Hoops, Eric, man. We appreciate all you do, brother, in terms of scouting, man, and just being able to get these kids some recognition, being able to evaluate them and help them ultimately, like you said, transition to potentially playing the college level. And then as they go on, possible pro endeavors as well. So, E, thanks for your time. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to episode number 9. We had a loaded show today. Again, special shout out to our guest, Travis Graf, who is a national basketball analyst for Rivals and also co-partner of ours here at Made Hoops. You all know Eric Hampford. He's our director of scouting here at Made, and he tapped in with us and a bunch of great insight for you guys regarding EYBL Session 2, the Hoop Group Pit Jam Fest. So go back, man, share it with a friend, share your favorite part about the episode online, and look forward to seeing y'all again on episode number 10. Again, I'm Made Hoops host, Austin Smith. We look forward to tapping in with you all again on the next episode of the Made Hoops podcast.